Hi everybody, this is Nancy Miller, children's book author and illustrator and also art teacher. So I wanted to take this moment to kind of reflect on where I was in the process of my children's book that I had mentioned in a previous video that had been acquired with Holiday House. And so I finished the artwork. Everything is done and I'm just kind of sitting here and I'm just like in shock because it's been quite a long project. So it took me about a year, just a little recap, a year to get the manuscript and book dummy to the point where I could send it out. And so that means like numerous rounds with revisions and also critique partners and also other readers. I also read it out loud and kind of showed the book dummy on I guess it was 2 or 3 school visits. So it was great to have those students' feedback. And so before I even sent it out, all of this had kind of transpired within that year time frame. And so it's kind of funny because it took a year to get to the point where I had something that I felt like, oh, I can send this out. Excuse me. And then I felt like as far as the acquisition process, that went fairly quickly for me, and it's different for everybody. But then as far as the contract going back, that took a little bit longer, and then being able to dive in to work on the actual book illustrations. So pretty much most of the text, it had some minor revisions to it, edits, but then the illustrations, of course, they took a lot longer. I'd say about a year and a half for that. So at this point, once those files go into the hands of the book publisher and I send it off to the editor, then they'll do their part and their magic to make a physical book. So that they have a year because, like I said, it comes out in spring of 2026. So I kind of want to reflect about how I felt at this moment because it was such a long-term project, and to have something at the end of it that I go like, it's physically going to be real. So I go, it's very surreal, I would say, because yeah, at points of it I was like, is this really happening? Is it really happening? And now I'm like, yeah, it really, because I actually made it to the finish line. And so, when you're working on larger projects like this, like it really pushed me to grow in a way that I never thought I could. I feel like at this point, I'm pretty confident about how I work as an illustrator. I know basically after, I don't know, 20 plus illustrations, how I work on from beginning to end. And so that was great. Even though I'd done other book dummies, like I'd only do a couple samples, and I think this push to do so many illustrations, it was just like I had to streamline things. I had to figure out like, how can I make this, work in a way, because I'm working dimensionally with cut paper and things like that, and making sure there was consistency across the board, because like lighting and then how I edit things digitally after I'm done with everything. So yeah, I really kind of like dialed down on a process of how I work, and I keep making progressions where I'm trying to improve that. And also, at the end of this I was like, I would be interested in doing other ways of doing cut paper, like maybe just 2D collage, and like maybe not being so necessarily tied to just this one way of creating my illustration work, because the way I work now, I go like it encompasses lots of different materials and techniques, and then going forward, maybe using aspects of that, because not every story really needs to be full out 3D cut paper. Maybe there's stories that need to be just a little bit more on the 2D side. So yeah, but I'll always have that aspect. I know after doing this, I was like, I still feel like I don't get bored having that traditional aspect of things being handmade. So that's still really important to me. Like I just never got tired of it. I was like, it was still always exciting. It was still always refreshing. And I think how I think, and being able to then take a photograph of it and then be able to digitally deliver that and kind of do that glow up thing. I call it my glow up, and then really, make the things visually the way I envisioned in my mind. And so I'm really happy with that. I'm really proud of myself that I kept going and tried to improve. And like, I think one of the biggest things I did was like I just would redo things. If I wasn't happy with it, I really knew that sometimes you got to do it a second time and sometimes you got to do it a third time, and being okay with that. Because I think the takeaway for me was, in the past I would get frustrated, like before my younger self, and I just would be like, oh, in my head I would be like, okay, it can't really be any better. No, it can be. So I think being honest with myself, because there's no point where I can really go, like when you're in school and you get people to give you feedback, and that's all great and everything like that, but when you're working at like 2 in the morning or something like that, nobody really wants you to bother them about getting feedback on your artwork. You just kind of push through. And so then you just have to be honest and be like, okay, yeah, I could do this again. And I think that really served me well, because those initial first illustrations that I did, and I just was like, okay, they're just not what I envisioned. And then it would just really bother me. And I knew even after I tore it down, like, it's still not good enough. So I would reset it up and reshoot it. It was really that part with the photography, because I was to a certain point confident about it, but I hadn't like totally dialed it down. And now I'm like, okay, I got this dialed down. And like, how are certain things going to look with specific white balance and just different things like that, the mood or the feeling that I wanted to convey. So yeah, that was a really interesting learning process, but I'm glad I pushed through. I definitely, yeah, have a firmer grasp, maybe a firmer grasp, maybe not the, I could always learn more and get better at that. So I'll continue to do that, but also like push myself to do other kinds of materials and techniques that can help with the stories that I want to continue to tell. So yeah, that's been great on that front. But there's also the part of me that kind of wonders, because at this point, you finish a book and you've written and you illustrated and you go like, okay, will there be another book? Because I had such a blast working on this project with Holiday House. It was so much fun. I was like, even though it was like a long-term project, and I think it's different for everybody, some people, this would be like, I can't work on something for this long, or I'm not into narrative storytelling or whatever, and that's perfectly fine. But I've found it to be so soul satisfying for me to work on story projects long term, because I was like really getting to see myself grow as an author, as an illustrator. I get a little nervous because I go like anything, will I be able to sell another story? Will I be able to create something that will, work out in the market? I think anybody who, I don't know, because I think just because you get one, book out there, does that necessarily mean that doors will be easy to get through for, to get my other stories out there? I don't know. I think it's just, part of me says, ooh, I think I got really, lucky. Like, it was like that, skill level, being at the right, having the right story, the right skill level to be able to tell that story visually and also written. And then what the story was about, it kind of hit at the right time and with the right editor. So I feel like that's kind of luck. And, so I'm just hoping, because I, heard that if you write something down, you're 45% more likely to achieve that. Have a little post-it note saying that I will write and sell another book. What that will be, I have no idea. So I try to be open-minded about things and willing to experiment and try different types of formats. And so that's why I decided, okay, let me try to write a middle grade novel, because I really wanted to illustrate a middle grade. And of course, no one's knocking at my door. So I figure if I do that, then it'll give me the experience, and then I'll put something in my portfolio conveying that I could possibly handle a middle grade manuscript, for cover art, and also black and white interiors. So I think, especially after doing more projects that are things that I have written and I feel fully invested in them and willing to go the extra mile to be like, I want it to be a certain way. And whether that makes sense to anybody else, it's very, I don't know, it just really gives me a sense of accomplishment about the work that I'm making, and makes me want to keep doing this again and again, which kind of is a little bit insane, because let's talk about like the rejection amounts. in this field of publishing. And I have my rejections right here. You know, I've mentioned in videos before that I'm also an art teacher, and I was teaching a drawing lesson to my students, and they were finding it especially challenging. And I decided I would bring my rejection letters to school so they could see, because I could feel it in the classroom. Like anytime that you teach and you kind of get the vibe of like, ooh, I don't know that this is going the way I anticipated this to go. Like, it was a drawing lesson, really about outlines, contour lines, and things like that. I love drawing myself. I enjoyed drawing. That's what led me into the world of illustration, is just that pure enjoyment of drawing. Yeah, and so I decided I would share with my students the, you know, number of rejection letters I'd gotten over the years. So like, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the video, but this was not like my first time going on this rodeo. Definitely the first time I've added writing as well as a, you know, illustrator and an author. But I kept all the letters because for me it was kind of that motivation and drive to say I will get better, because one day the no's might turn into a yes. And so I laminated them, and I'm not going to show you the front of them, but I just wanted to show you that over the course of years I've received numerous rejections. And it's one of those things, like, I've learned over time that you just kind of end up learning to pick yourself up a little bit more quickly. Like, it's nothing personal. It's just that that story is not right for them. And, you know, if you're lucky, someone will write something nice. And some of these are format, this like just generic rejections. And I kind of learned to pick myself a lot quicker and not take it personally. And I realized I can just write something more, you know, write and illustrate, create something else, because each time that I do, I'm going to get better at my craft. And so there will be a certain intersection of when I send something out that my craft and what I've written and what I've created will be what they're interested in acquiring. And yeah, and then having talked and interviewed a lot of these other, you know, much more successful author illustrators, it really encouraged me to keep going, because they said, you know, this is a kind of a marathon for most people. You know, there is always going to be some people who throughout the gate, and those are probably the ones that, you know, get highlighted the most, that their journey was very quick. But overall, I found my journey to be pretty slow. And so, you know, creating this work here that you have, you know, it's like muscle memory. The more that you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And I really challenge them to think about that maybe you're not going to be an artist. Maybe this isn't your thing, but I want you to realize, like, whatever, you know, you really want, because one day you'll probably want something really that's much bigger than outside of what is here in this classroom. You know, are you just going to give up when you hear that first no? Or you feel that feeling of like, I'm not good at this, or, you know, the imposter syndrome. Are you just going to give up? No, because you really want it, and you're going to keep pursuing it, and you're going to try to get better at it, and you're going to keep growing. And so it was great to see, after I showed all of the things that I got rejected for, that my students seemed to get it, and then they worked harder. Which, as the art teacher, I was like, yay, win right there. And I really do want them to pursue their own wishes and hopes that they have, but realize those bigger things that they want, they're going to be tougher usually. I mean, and that they're probably going to be things they're going to have to work really hard at. And so with that, it worked out. So yeah, but I wanted those people who had been listening to my videos and kind of followed along with my journey, that they realized that I too have faced a lot of rejections, a lot of no's, but because I've set myself out there and put my work out there, there's been some yeses. And I'm so grateful for those yeses in my life, and they have pushed me to be a better writer and illustrator. And it's been great to be able to share that with my students, to get them to understand the broader sense of just their hopes and desires and the things that they want. And I cheerlead them on. I go, you know, I'll never make fun of anyone in my class about the things that they want and the things they want to achieve. Because one day they may work really hard and they may just get them. So anyways, I wanted to share that with those people who've followed me along my journey, and so now I'm at the very end of it, and I'll start rolling this back up. But don't take it to heart. Things might seem like you're never going to get there, but one day, if you are trying to get into something that's much more creative field, you know, you can keep working on your craft and keep going, and you will probably get the opportunity to hear that yes that you want. But just realize, because this is what I had in my experience, like sometimes the yeses that you think are going to work out aren't always the ones that you thought. Because maybe you thought, oh my gosh, I could never get that. That's like way, that's amazing. I could never get that. But sometimes you might. So I always look at those little yeses and cheerlead myself on with them, and know that hopefully there are going to be a lot more coming. So with that said, I will keep writing and I will keep illustrating my own stories, because I realize the nature of the way that I like to work doesn't suit all stories. And you know, I got some advice from a really nice editor. They were just like, you know, Nancy, you're better off just trying to write your own stories, because your work is very different than what is currently out there. And you know, with that said, I said, you know, I like working this way. It was a conscientious decision on my part, and so maybe I made it harder for myself, but I've been really happy with what, because the way I like to make my work is important to me, and that process is something that I have to really enjoy, and I feel like because I enjoyed it so much, it shows in the final work. So I'm super happy as this video and this rolling comes to an end. I appreciate everybody's encouragement. I appreciate that people have cheerleaded me on, my fellow authors and illustrators and creators and family and friends, because I hope to, you know, keep sending out and keep growing as a creator of stories for children. So yeah, but I'll keep everybody posted, because the next step will be eventually seeing some page proofs, and yeah, I mean, so the next time, it may be a while before I post another video, because I return full-time teaching, so that kind of limits when I have time to do things like this, and share my journey. But like I said, thank you to everybody who's encouraged me along the way, and I want to encourage anybody who's listening to keep trying and keep growing at your craft. And yeah, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, I have a full-time job. that's how I, you know, am able to pursue and do now, even more so, the kind of stories I want to write and create. I'm going to be really able to dial down on bringing a level of authenticity and life experience to those books that would have been a lot harder to do just by reading about them or searching online. And so I'm super excited about the things that I'm going to get to learn and continue to share with my students. So anyways, that's just my little story time and my reflections about finishing my debut children's book with Holiday House that will be out spring of 2026, Sun, Moon, and Star. So thank you everybody for listening. All right, bye.